Hey everybody, how you doing? What's up gamers? What's up Let's Players and everybody else and all the YouTubes and everything? I am Skylent Shore with this channel, Skylent Games. This is my personal channel, and we're going to be talking about the top 10 roguelite titles. These are games that would be considered roguelike, but they're a little bit more action-based. They're almost like action RPGs, but they have roguelike elements. These games are, well, very varied, I guess you could say. It's kind of a weird gray genre because it's kind of just been invented, and it's also off of another very niche genre, so if a game doesn't quite seem roguelite to you or roguelike to you, well, that's just because the genre itself is pretty vague. So I wanted to do a top 10 of the games that I played that I find the most enjoyable and the most popular and overall just the best roguelite titles for you to kind of help elucidate the situation here. So without further ado, let's get into it. So first off, on our top 10 list here, we got Realm of the Mad God. Yeah, how is this game a roguelite? It's an MMO. Well, that's because roguelite and multiplayer don't have to be exclusive. No, actually, Realm of the Mad God is probably the only MMO that I could probably consider actually like a rogue title. Because not only do you have permadeath, yes, but your character actually gets deleted and you have to start over. And from dying, much like other roguelite games, you actually get rewards. You unlock new classes or characters. And yeah, there is sort of like a save feature in the game, and it is multiplayer, but for the most part, if there's ever an MMO that could be a rogue title, it would be Realm of the Mad God. It is a dungeon diver, and even the server itself resets every day or so that every day, everybody is leveling up and trying to go and defeat the Mad God. It is an awesome rush of adrenaline. It's a bullet hell, but at the same time, it's a rogue game, but at the same time, it's an MMO. Really, it's just a mishmash of a lot of different things, and it feels awesome. Number 9 on the list is a game that I am actually doing a Let's Play series on, and previously in the past I've done 2 already, and that's Dungeon of the Endless. I think this title is awesome. It's actually more roguelike than roguelite, but it's still, I'm gonna have to say it's more action-based. It is slightly turn-based because there are waves. It's wave-based. It's kind of like tower defense meets a rogue game. It's called Dungeon of the Endless. You actually move up through the levels of a dungeon, and every time you open a room, it's essentially like a turn, and it creates waves of monsters, and all the dungeons are randomly generated, and you have really cool characters and power-ups, and you have a lot of control over your towers, over your defenses, what you build and stuff. But a lot of the game is very random, and every time you go through a playthrough, it's very, very different, which is the definition of rogue. And yes, once your characters die, all your characters, your whole team dies, they are dead forever, and you'll have to restart. It's a really harsh game, but it's got a really awesome and gorgeous look to it. Plus, it actually ties in with the other Endless titles, which don't even share the same art style or gameplay, which is pretty fun. At number 8, I have a game that admittedly I don't have a lot of experience with, and that's Spelunky. Spelunky seems somewhat similar to Terraria. I'm not saying it is Terraria at all, really. I guess it would be like if Terraria was truly a roguelike game, without all the super duper crafting and stuff. Spelunky, you are a spelunker, and you go adventuring, and that's really what makes the game very different from other roguelikes. Yes, rogue is a genre that is filled with adventuring, but spelunker and spelunkies, it's just a kind of a very peculiar form of adventuring. It's a lot more different. Actually, traversing the map itself is actually very difficult because you have a limited number of bombs and ropes to actually move around the map and explore. And it is a 2D game that is side-scrolling, so it is a little bit different than what we are used to in the top-down roguelike and roguelike games. So yeah, Spelunky definitely earns its spot just because of its polish, the amount of content, and the randomization that it has. What I can say is that I really do appreciate its art style. It's actually very cute and incredibly approachable, while at the same time still kind of having a retro feel to it. And at number 7, we have Dungeon Souls, and if you watch my channel, you know that I play a lot of Dungeon Souls. It is in early access, the game is not completely finished yet, but even so, it is still a fantastic addition to the roguelite genre. Absolutely, you have tons of very random pickups. You have very interesting classes that are incredibly strategic, sometimes tactical, sometimes a little bit brain dead. I'm talking about the Barbarian, a little bit easy, approachable. And a lot of these classes, though, are very, very difficult and weird and strange. I'm looking at you, Nightblade. So kind of that's the novelty of the game. The novelty, as would be implied by the souls in its name, is just very difficult, and the point of the game isn't to just try to beat it as efficiently as possible, but to play it and try to do the weirdest builds and have the most fun with the weirdest classes and just try to survive the waves, the dungeons, and that's just basically it. Honestly, I really love the different characters. They don't have just new passive abilities, they have entirely different kits, and the items interacting with those different kits is just tremendous amount of fun, more so than any other roguelite that I've played. And at number 6, we have Rogue Legacy, which I have not even touched yet, but apparently it's freaking awesome. It's got raving reviews, and looking at it, it seems that its main focus is actually very similar to Spelunky. It is a Metroidvania roguelite title, but it really focuses on sort of that like Castlevania feel, except with, you know, all the rogue stuffs. It's procedurally generated dungeons. You have lots of different characters with very weird, sometimes incredibly silly abilities. And of course, you got all the items to collect, all these bosses, and overall, it just seems really action-based. Spelunky is more about like adventuring, and well, Rogue Legacy is a little bit more in-your-face, explosive action. And I think because of the characters of Rogue Legacy, it definitely adds a little bit more replayability than Spelunky, which is absolutely why it's a little bit higher in the list. It seems like it's got a little bit of a comic value to it, but at the same time, it seems like it's got the difficulty and the challenge that you would want in a rogue title. Roguelike plus Metroidvania, and you've got Rogue Legacy. Halfway on our list, we have a game that I just recently picked up, and I know it's already really popular, even though it's in early access, though it's been in early access for a little bit, and that is Nuclear Throne. Now, this game is pretty freaking mechanical. It's got a lot of different characters, but for the most part, these characters just kind of have different passive abilities. However, how those passive abilities really interact with the mechanics of the game is truly inspiring, because you have a weapon swapping system. In game like Dungeon Souls, you have your set weapon, and you have your set abilities. Yeah, you do have different abilities, but Nuclear Throne is kind of the opposite of that. You have a lot of different weapons, and the combinations of the weapons that you can swap and switch and all that stuff is already very mechanical and very unique. And then add on your passive abilities and how your character interacts with those weapons, because you do get two, and you can swip and swap between those, and oh my gosh, dude, the game gets super complicated, incredibly mechanical. Maybe not so much as strategic, but that's actually a really good thing. There is a lot of tactics, because you do have a little bit less randomness, because you can actually level up and evolve, like kind of like RPG-esque. And this allows the game to be a little bit more competitive than others right out of the gate. And it's not even out of the gate. Next up on the list, we have Faster Than Light, or FTL. This is going to be a top-down spaceship simulator. In the game, the player controls the crew of a single spacecraft, holding critical information to be delivered to an allied fleet 8 sectors away. So yeah, you gotta make it that way. This is the survival, this is the rogue experience. You are being pursued by a large rebel fleet, right? Okay, so the player must guide the spacecraft over 8 sectors, each with planetary systems and events procedurally generated in a roguelike kind of fashion, while facing against rebel and other hostile forces. Recruiting new crew and outfitting and upgrading their ship, it can get pretty fun, pretty strategic. And this is really awesome, especially with the procedural generation. You gotta account for all sorts of randomness, which is why we love rogue games. Plus, you can pause it, so this makes it more roguelike than roguelite, but still, it's faster than light. We're gonna call it a roguelite. And starting at a big bad 3, we have Crypt of the Necrodancer, which is actually really somewhere situated right between roguelite and roguelike. Because while it's not technically turn-based, because it is rhythm-based, it kind of does play in turns, sort of. If you move on the beats, you actually get rewarded. And so all the creatures, everything, the whole game plays to a rhythm. Everything is moving kind of in turns, but the turns aren't like paused-based. It's weird. It's a weird game. It's a dancing rhythm rogue game thing. It's a dungeon diver. And yeah, you do have your whole exploration, you have your random items, and you have your monsters that are procedurally generated with the dungeons, and all that stuff, just with the caveat that it is beat-based. And with that, it's got really cute art style. It's got a freaking booming, kickin' soundtrack. I think the game overall is just incredibly awesome. And definitely novel, even for a novel genre. Number 2 on our top 10 list for roguelite games is going to be Don't Starve Together. Now this game is somewhat questionable in being considered a roguelite title, or even roguelike, because this is a survival game. Think Minecraft if it were mixed with a roguelike sort of genre, and yeah, that's Don't Starve. Even Don't Starve Together, which I'm putting on this list as Together. I think Don't Starve is a fantastic game, and you can go play the single-player experience, and it is great. It's essentially the same as Don't Starve Together, but with Don't Starve Together, you are, well, together. It's a multiplayer game up to, I don't even know if there's a limit on players, but you have a lot of players, and even though it is a multiplayer roguelike game, it is still run with rogue settings, okay? So if you die, you essentially are dead. It's over, and if everybody dies on the server, the entire server is reset, so it is the definition of rogue. Procedurally, tile-based, or whatever, the levels, everything that you would want in roguelikes. Lots of random items, too, to pick up from monsters, but there's crafting. So that is kind of a different thing that we're not used to seeing in rogue games. You can craft your items, and there's a lot of strategy with building and everything, but there's still a lot of procedural generated stuff, a lot of random happenings in the game. However, there is sort of like a semi-death. You can actually die and then be resurrected, and your teammates can actually resurrect you, though, for the most part, if everyone dies all at the same time, they die. Okay, so basically, if a co-op game could ever be rogue, it would be Don't Starve, and Don't Starve does it fantastically. It's why it has almost near perfect reviews. And our number 1 for the top 10 roguelike games is gonna have to be the, well, poster child for the genre, and that is Binding of Isaac. Binding of Isaac actually is the game that everyone references when you say, what is a roguelike game? Well, that's Binding of Isaac. It's not exactly roguelike, of course, it's incredibly action-based, and so it kind of like ushered in the whole entire genre, essentially. So, roguelike games are also kind of considered like Binding of Isaac-like. So, yeah, Binding of Isaac is a game where you play as Isaac or many other characters that you unlock through playing, and all the different rooms of these different dungeons are procedurally generated, and you have different random, very weird random pickups, and overall, it's very similar to roguelike, just incredibly action and physics-based, which makes Isaac, even among other roguelike games that have copied its sort of system, very, very unique and different, because your projectiles actually have momentum, and you have a lot of mechanicalness with the different items that come out. It's very skill-based, even though at the same time it is very random, which can make it very silly. Using these items and utilizing your position with these different items and combinations of power-ups and stuff makes the game kind of competitive, and that's why you see leaderboards and you see speedruns and stuff like that. Binding of Isaac is a lot of fun for anybody, but also incredibly competitively viable. The idea that a rogue game could actually be competitive was brought to light because of Binding of Isaac. Many of these other games on this list, and future games coming out, are probably, almost certainly, inspired by Binding of Isaac. So if there's any roguelike games that you are even considering at all, Binding of Isaac should probably be the one. Well, at least it's my number 1 for the top 10 roguelike games. So that was it. That was my top 10 roguelike games. It was based on my personal opinion and a little bit on statistics based on how games are popular and how they're rated critically. Hopefully, I kind of hit all the bases and got all these sub-genres of rogue in there, and you're gonna have some fun with them. I hope so. If you've seen anyone previously that is not on this list, then go ahead, give it a shout out in the comments below. I'd actually really like to know. Maybe I missed a game completely, and it's actually a really good game. I want to go play it. Tell me in the comments below. And I'm sure that we're gonna have some controversial conversation about the whole rogue naming of genres. You know, roguelike and roguelite, are they actually different genres? Is there really a differentiation? I don't know. It's definitely a topic of discussion, and sure, let's go ahead, let's have it. Thanks for watching once again. Remember to like and subscribe. I've got a lot of top 10s coming out. I'm doing a lot of Let's Plays, and remember guys, this is my personal channel where I do Let's Plays and stuff. Generally, it's going to be single player or co-op-y, LAN-y kind of games. I do free MMOs over at freemmostation.com, and I focus on competitive multiplayer games over at Attack Gaming Official or MMOATK.com. But I'd be really happy if you guys are enjoying the stuff on my personal channel because, well, I enjoy it, and that's why I'm uploading it. If you want to play with me, in-game names, the descriptions below of all the games I play. Yeah, if you want to see more content like this, go ahead, share it, like it, all that good stuff. Just keep coming back, guys, and I'll keep them coming.